The rain fell in unrelenting sheets over the Grand Regent Hotel, streaking its marble facade with lines of liquid silver and thunder grumbling like a restless beast above. Inside, the corridors glowed under soft amber lights, polished to perfection by the same man now sweeping the lobby floor, Samuel "Sam" Hayes, the night janitor. 52, quiet, disciplined, and black, in a city that pretended it wasn't still haunted by its prejudices. Sam had worked here for 12 years, never late, never in trouble, and known by most staff for his polite nods and steady silence. But tonight, as lightning flickered through the high glass windows, he felt something strange in the air, a tension that hung like static before a storm. He looked up when he heard the sharp clack of heels echoing across the marble. Eleanor Voss, one of the hotel's long-term guests. She was beautiful in a cold, sculpted way, blonde hair gleaming under the chandeliers, diamond earrings flashing like tiny knives. She smiled faintly at Sam as she passed, though it didn't reach her eyes, and vanished into the elevator that would take her up to room 14, the penthouse suite she'd rented for nearly a month. Moments later, the hotel manager, Richard Langford, emerged from his office, a tall man in his 50s, tailored suit, eyes sharp and restless. "Sam," he said curtly, "finish up quickly and make sure the 12th floor corridor is clean before shift change." Sam nodded and pushed his cart toward the service elevator. Langford watched him go, expression unreadable, before disappearing back into his office.
Upstairs, the 12th floor smelled faintly of perfume and expensive secrets. Sam worked quietly, wiping down the brass railing, his mop sliding in rhythmic arcs over the marble floor. He had just finished when he noticed something odd, the door to room 14 slightly ajar. Guests didn't usually leave it like that. He hesitated, then knocked gently. "Housekeeping," he called. No answer. The door creaked wider under a draft, revealing a flicker of light from inside. Sam stepped closer, peering through the crack. The room was half lit, curtains drawn against the storm. A broken glass lay on the carpet, champagne pooling like spilled gold. He called again, louder this time, but still nothing. Unease prickled his neck. Maybe she'd left in a hurry. He pushed the door slightly open, enough to see the edge of the bed, white sheets tangled. Something about the silence felt wrong. Then a voice echoed down the hall behind him, Langford's, sharp and sudden. "Sam! What are you doing up here?" Sam turned quickly, startled. "Door was open, sir. I thought someone—" "You thought wrong," Langford cut in, his tone laced with irritation. "Get back downstairs." "I'll handle this." Sam hesitated, sensing the tension in the man's face, but obeyed. He backed away, closing the door as he left, and wheeled his cart toward the service elevator. Minutes later, lightning flashed again, and thunder rolled, and by the time Sam reached the lobby, he was met with chaos. A woman screamed somewhere above. 2 security guards sprinted toward the elevators. Langford's voice barked orders over the hotel radio. "Lock down the building." "Room 14. Call the police. There's been a murder." Sam froze mid-step, his mop clattering to the ground. He looked up in disbelief as the words sank in. Murder. Room 14. The room he'd just been standing outside. His hands trembled as one of the guards approached him. "Sam Hayes?" the guard asked. "Yeah?" "Mr. Langford wants to see you upstairs." Sam's stomach tightened, but he followed, confusion turning to dread. When they reached room 14, the door was open now, and inside, Eleanor Voss lay sprawled across the bed, lifeless. Her once perfect hair was matted with blood, a crimson stain spreading across the silk sheets. Sam staggered back, horror twisting his face. No, I didn't." But Langford was already pointing at him, his expression cold and certain. "He was the last person seen near the room," Langford said. "Security footage shows him in the hallway minutes before the scream." One of the guards grabbed Sam's arm as police sirens wailed outside. "You're under arrest," the officer said as they cuffed him, reading his rights. Sam protested, voice breaking. "I didn't kill her. I swear I didn't. She wasn't answering. I didn't." But the words sounded weak, useless against the growing storm of accusation. The next morning, headlines screamed across the city. Wealthy socialite murdered in Grand Regent Hotel, janitor in custody. They printed his mugshot beneath Eleanor's glamour photo, the contrast almost obscene. His weary face beside her radiant smile. The news anchors called it shocking, but their tones carried that unspoken undertone of expectation, as if a man like Sam was exactly the sort of person who might snap. They mentioned his financial struggles, his checkered past, a lie, and his proximity to the scene. The narrative wrote itself. The court of public opinion convicted him before the real one even convened. Detective Harold Briggs, 73, retired but consulting occasionally, watched the report over his black coffee. Something about it nagged at him. The timing, the simplicity. "Too neat," he muttered to himself. He'd seen real killers before, and they didn't fit neat boxes. But nobody asked him. Not yet. Meanwhile, Sam sat in a dim interrogation room, fluorescent lights buzzing above, hands cuffed to a metal table. Across from him sat Detective Mason, mid-40s, impatient and smug. "You were seen leaving the floor minutes before the murder," Mason said, leaning forward. "Your fingerprints are on the door handle, on the glass near the bed." "You knew the victim?" "I didn't know her," Sam said quietly. "I clean." "That's all I do." The door was open. "I looked in. That's it?" Mason snorted. "Right. You just happened to wander into the suite of a millionaire. And what? She just ended up dead after you left." Sam swallowed hard. "I didn't kill her." Mason stood, pushing away from the table. "You think anyone's gonna believe that?" he said, voice dropping. "You were the only black man on that floor. Every witness saw you. You ran when the scream was heard. I didn't run." Sam protested, his voice cracking. "I was told to leave by Mr. Langford." "Ask him." But Mason smirked. "We did. And guess what? He said you looked nervous. Said you were always watching her. Sam's breath caught. That's not true. He also said you had financial problems. Maybe wanted to rob her." "We found a missing diamond earring in the room." Mason tossed a photo onto the table. Eleanor's earring, glittering. "Looks bad, Sam. Real bad." Sam's hands clenched, tears stinging his eyes. "I didn't steal anything." "I didn't kill her." He's lying. But Mason was already walking away, the sound of the door slamming echoing like a verdict. That night, in his small cell, Sam stared at the ceiling and prayed, though he wasn't sure who was listening anymore. Across town, Langford sat in his office, alone, staring at a thick folder he'd locked in his desk drawer. It contained bank records, falsified invoices, and a ledger, evidence of his embezzlement scheme that Eleanor had discovered just 2 days before she died. She'd confronted him that evening, threatening to expose him. He'd panicked, struck her, and when she fell, he'd realized the only way to save himself was to make sure the blame went elsewhere. Sam had been perfect, quiet, invisible, expendable. Langford poured himself a drink, hand trembling slightly. Outside, thunder rumbled again, but someone was watching. From a car parked across the street, Detective Briggs lowered his binoculars. He'd followed Langford after noticing inconsistencies in his statement. The timeline. The missing 5 minutes between when he said he saw Sam and when the scream was heard. Briggs had been around too long to believe in coincidences. "Let's see what you're hiding, Langford," he muttered. The storm had passed, but something darker was about to break, and in the silence of his cell, Sam whispered into the dark, "They got the wrong man." He was right, but no one was listening. Not yet. Morning light filtered weakly through the narrow cell window, slicing across Sam's tired face as he sat on his cot, staring at the floor. It had been 3 days since his arrest. 3 days of silence, suspicion, and sleepless nights. Outside the bars, footsteps echoed and the door creaked open. "You got a visitor," the guard muttered. Sam looked up, expecting a lawyer, but the man who entered was older, grayer, and wore a trench coat that smelled faintly of rain and tobacco. "Name's Harold Briggs," he said, pulling up a chair. "I'm a retired detective, but I don't believe everything the papers tell me." "You say you didn't kill Eleanor Voss?" Sam's voice cracked. "I didn't. I swear I didn't." Briggs studied his eyes for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. Because I think you're telling the truth. And I think someone's trying very hard to make sure nobody believes you." He opened his worn leather notebook and flipped through scribbled notes. "I've been watching Langford." The man's nervous. Too nervous for an innocent witness. There are gaps in his timeline, financial discrepancies, and his story about finding the body doesn't add up. "I need you to walk me through everything you remember that night. Every sound, every movement." Sam recounted the events, how the door to room 14 had been open, how he'd seen the broken glass, how Langford appeared suddenly, agitated, and sent him away. Briggs's eyes sharpened. "Did you touch anything in that room?" "Just the door handle," Sam said, "and maybe the mop handle when I leaned it by the wall." "Nothing else?" "No, sir." Briggs leaned back, thinking. "Then that glass. Your fingerprints couldn't have been on it unless someone planted them." That afternoon, Briggs visited the hotel, walking its gleaming halls like a ghost from another time. The staff whispered as he passed, unsure who he was but sensing authority in his calm steps. He found Langford in his office, all charm and forced composure. "Detective Briggs," Langford said smoothly, "I heard about you. The department's watchdog, right? I suppose you're here to poke holes in an open and shut case." Briggs smiled faintly. "Just tying loose ends. Mind if I take a look around?" Langford hesitated but gestured toward the door. "Be my guest." As Briggs walked through the office, he noticed the faint scent of cleaning solvent. Too strong, as if something had been recently scrubbed. His eyes landed on a small waste bin beside the desk, freshly emptied but not spotless. He bent down and picked up a torn piece of paper from the corner, edges smeared faintly with red ink. "You run a tight ship," Briggs murmured. "Always have," Langford replied, hands clasped tightly. "Tell me," Briggs said casually, "how long had Miss Voss been a guest here?" 3 weeks. "And you two were acquainted?" "Barely," Langford lied, smiling too quickly. Briggs noted the twitch in his jaw. "Strange," he said softly, "because I checked the phone records. You called her sweet 3 times the day before she died." Langford's expression faltered for half a second. "Routine hotel business," he said. "She complained about her minibar." Briggs nodded, pocketing the torn paper. "Of course." He left without another word, but his instincts were already screaming. That night, back in his apartment, Briggs pieced together the fragments. Langford's nervousness, the bank withdrawals, the forged invoices. He cross-referenced the hotel's security logs and found that one of the cameras on the 12th floor, specifically the one near room 14, had a 15-minute blackout during the critical window. "Too convenient," he muttered. He called Mason, the lead detective on the case. "That footage, who handled the hotel's security backups?" Mason yawned. "Langford did. He said the system glitched." "It didn't glitch," Briggs said. "It was erased." "You got proof?" "Not yet," Briggs said. "But I will." He hung up, heart pounding with renewed purpose. The next day, Briggs returned to the hotel under the pretense of interviewing staff. One young maid, Maria, seemed particularly nervous. When Briggs gently pressed, she whispered, "I saw Mr. Langford that night, before the scream. He came out of room 14. He looked scared. He told me not to tell anyone he was there." Briggs's pulse quickened. "You're sure?" She nodded. "I swear. But I didn't tell the police. I need this job." Briggs thanked her and slipped her his card. "You just helped save an innocent man," he said. That evening, armed with a warrant, Briggs and 2 officers searched Langford's office. At first, nothing, just ledgers, invoices, and sterile surfaces. Then Briggs's eyes caught the faint outline of something behind a framed painting. A small wall safe. Inside were several envelopes stuffed with cash, a flash drive, and a blood-stained handkerchief embroidered with Langford's initials. "Got you," Briggs whispered. On the drive, the contents were damning. Financial records showing Eleanor's discovery of the embezzlement scheme, her emails to Langford threatening exposure, and a video clip, security footage that had never been turned in. Briggs clicked play. The grainy image showed the corridor outside room 14. Sam's silhouette passed by once, then left. 5 minutes later, Langford appeared, entering the room. Another flash of lightning illuminated him, dragging something heavy, a body, toward the bed. The timestamp matched the time of death. Briggs exhaled slowly. "Case closed." Langford was arrested that night in the middle of a business dinner, his polished calm finally cracking as the officers read him his rights. "This is insane!" he shouted, struggling as they cuffed him. "That man killed her! I'm being framed!" Briggs watched from the corner, silent, his eyes cold and certain. "Funny," he said. "That's exactly what Sam Hayes said." Langford's face blanched as the flash drive was held up in front of him. The next morning, the news broke again, but this time the headline was different. "Hotel manager arrested in murder of Eleanor Voss. Innocent janitor exonerated." Cameras swarmed the courthouse steps as Sam walked free, the sunlight almost too bright after days in darkness. He looked out at the crowd, bewildered, his voice trembling as he spoke to the reporters. "I just want my life back," he said quietly. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." But someone did. Behind him, Briggs watched, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but satisfied. Later that evening, the 2 men sat in a small diner on the edge of town. Briggs sipped his coffee while Sam stared out the window at the city lights. "So what happens now?" Sam asked softly. Briggs shrugged. "Langford will talk. Men like him always do when the walls close in. He'll blame greed, desperation, maybe even claim it was an accident. But the truth is simple. He thought no one would care enough to look twice." Sam nodded slowly. "Because of who I am?" Briggs met his eyes. "Because people see what they expect to see. You were never the suspect. They just needed you to be." Silence hung between them, heavy but cleansing. Sam finally said, "You think people like me ever stop paying for what others assume?" Briggs smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But now they'll have to look you in the eye and know they were wrong. That's something." Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and steady, washing the city clean. In his office across town, Mason stared at the case file, guilt gnawing at him. He'd pushed too hard, listened too little. For the first time, he saw Sam's mugshot differently, not as a suspect, but as a man failed by the system. He closed the file and whispered, "We got the wrong man." Weeks later, the Grand Regent reopened under new management, its marble floors gleaming as if nothing had happened. But room 14 remained locked, unlisted on the registry, a silent monument to guilt and redemption. Some said at night they could hear footsteps in that corridor, a faint echo of the past refusing to die. Sam moved away, took a new job at a smaller hotel, quieter, humbler. Sometimes he still woke at night to the memory of flashing lights and shouting voices. But then he'd remember Briggs's steady hand on his shoulder, the truth that had finally come to light. And though the world had tried to bury him, he'd found something stronger than vengeance: vindication. For Briggs, it was another case closed, but one that stayed with him longer than most. He'd seen many kinds of guilt in his life, some earned, some planted, but this one reminded him why justice was never about proof alone. It was about looking past the obvious, past the easy answers. As thunder rolled once more over the city, both men, one freed, one fulfilled, went their separate ways under the same stormy sky, bound by a single truth that refused to fade. In room 14, the wrong man had been accused, but the right one had finally fallen.